Can you hear me?
Hey there, Jay.
How are you, Anthony? Nice to meet you.
Very well, thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, where are you on in LA?
I live in LA. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah.
downtown LA.
Do you
How
know,
about you? Of
are you familiar with Billy Mueller? Bill Mueller over there?
course, yeah.
Oh yeah, Bill's a good friend. We went to college.
Great guy. I love him.
Yeah, he's great. He was on the show maybe a year and a half ago or something.
Okay, fantastic. No, what a fantastic musician and cool person. And
Yeah, he really is. But
yeah,
all right, well, I guess we're here to talk about your newest record, right? For the most part.
yeah, yeah.
So the Anthony Wilson Nonette House of the Singing Blossoms, right?
Yes, sir.
How did you how'd you come up with the name?
Well, it was a kind of an interactivity between looking for an image for the cover of the album, which is a photograph, which ended up being a photograph made by Paul Solomon, who's the founder of Sam First. Actually, that's one of the aspects of their label is that they're using his photography for their album cover art.
Okay.
So I had a huge amount of his images that I was going through to choose an album cover, and I still had an untitled piece.
Mhm.
And I saw this image of a kind of a house in the dark with a light on and these beautiful purple blossoms at
Okay.
night, just kind of glowing. And immediately I thought of this phrase, "House of the Singing Blossoms," and thought that it captured something of what I was trying to do both in that particular piece and as well with the band. It's a kind of a casting that you do in a large band like this,
Mhm.
9 people looking for different voices and how they blend, intertwine, and kind of show their personality, grace,
Yeah.
style. And so I was thinking of these people that work with me as kind of the blossoms in the garden, and that you
Okay.
sort of plant that in the casting of the band, and then you allow the garden to kind of do its thing.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, let's talk about the non-ed format's a cool format. I've recently been playing with a non-ed like the last 2 years or so,
Oh
and
wow.
I'm amazed at how much sound if you can get and how much texture you can get from a nine-piece band. Can you talk about why a non-ed?
It's cheaper than a big band.
Yeah.
um, for me, when I first started doing ensembles like this, which was at the very beginning of my career as a recording musician, um, I was in the thrall of a few different things all at once. One was bands that had been led by blues guitarists like B.B. King, T-Bone Walker,
Yeah.
Gatemouth Brown. Um, you'd find them in a situation surrounded by something like 4 or 5 horns. And I loved the punchiness of this kind of horn-based ensemble surrounding a guitar player.
Mhm.
At the same time, I was also into forever, in fact, Gil Evans, the work of Gil Evans, and the records that he did with smaller ensembles,
Mhm.
as well as arrangers like Marty Page, who had an 11-piece band here in Los Angeles, and I adore his writing. And I was starting to think, well, I would like to write for a larger ensemble, but it really seems like if I tried to do a big band, it'd be a little complex to try to get gigs. Something like this, which is within the context of what I had been listening to, seemed like it made sense. So I just started writing arrangements. This was back in 1996 or so. It's a long
Right.
time ago. And and I eventually did a series of albums for a small label called the Mama Foundation, and we did 3 albums with the 9-piece band, each one a little different and reflecting a kind of a evolution of my abilities to be able to write for the band, stylistic growth and evolution. So it was just, it seemed like something I could do. I could probably get gigs for a little easier than if I had a really large band. And I loved the sound and I loved all of these different possibilities, both
Mhm.
a kind of, as you mentioned, large, big sound
Right.
um, with a lot of weight, especially with a baritone sax and a trombone, kind of anchoring a low end. It's a meaty sound, it's substantial.
Okay.
Um, at the same time, it wasn't so, and 3 saxophones gives us a bit of a sax section.
Mhm.
And then there's different ways of orchestrating those voices. And I just found that it was not so big that it didn't allow for also something that I love, which is just the small group adaptability of playing and the changeability of an arrangement and without having it have to be okay. Here's the you've got these 3 sections and you've got all this stuff and this is the way the arrangement goes. You have some flexibility there, some openness, and as I got better at writing for the ensembles, more experience, I found ways to exploit that and take advantage of that large group identity, but the possibility of having the interaction of a small group and sort of more of that kind of looseness, which at this point is one of my favorite aspects
Yeah.
of the thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like it's not so vast that you're so locked in to the arrangement, and yet it's not not so small that it's like totally interactive without some structure, right? So it's like to me it's such a cool amount of musicians to work with. It's like just a perfect color palette, if you will, of sounds. But what
Absolutely.
Yeah, but what makes yours a little unique is that the guitar, of course, is one of the nine. So I guess foregoing perhaps another trumpet player, right? A lot of
Sure.
nonettes would have 2 trumpets, I would say.
Sure, and I love that sound, although I don't always use it, but a sound of a guitar, a trumpet,
Mhm.
and a trombone orchestrated together in a kind of a 3-part uh, configuration. I mean, there's an older arrangement of mine, which is called Southern Gentleman, which was from my first album. There's a little section in that piece that I based on sounds that I heard from the film composer Nino Rota,
Oh, sure.
and he would do these kind of little cheeky little orchestrated sections with guitar with muted trumpet and muted trombone, and I
Right.
just loved that. And so and I do stuff like that still to this day. Yeah, so you have that ability. You have 2 groupings of 3 if you want them, of
Yeah.
course. Everybody can be tutti. I love also, you know, taking the baritone away from the sax sometimes and having him act as a low brass with the trombone and the trumpet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, there's just so many possibilities. It's cool. It's really cool. And I should tell you, I really enjoy the album. It was
thank you.
I listened to it several times, and it's I like the variety, for sure. And there's a couple of tunes I wanted to ask about, but before I do, just if you could talk about how you chose the musicians, these all musicians you've worked with for quite some time.
They are musicians in every case who I've known for
Hmm.
either a longer or shorter period of time, but people who are in our community. So, for instance, the drummer and the trombone player, who are twin brothers, Alan and Mark Ferber,
Uh-huh.
uh, or drummer Mark and trombone Alan. To not confuse anybody about with the order. It's confusing enough when you see them. You know, it's like, oh, they're twins. Brilliant, brilliant musicians whom I've had the good fortune to know since about the year 2000 or 2001. We became very good friends. They both went to UCLA. They knew my father. My father was a big band leader, a composer, arranger, trumpet player, Gerald Wilson, and he taught history of jazz at UCLA for many, many years. And they were both in his class, and we got to know each other in the 2000s and started playing together then, and that's been a continuous relationship. Gerald Clayton on piano is somebody I've known since he was in his teens. He's the son of the great John Clayton and the nephew of uh, Jeffrey Clayton, alto sax player, a multi-reed player. So I've known Gerald for many, many years, and we started playing together probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. Really, really nice connection there that's strong. The bass player, Anna Butters, also part of our community here and for many, many years. These days, really quite known for the band that they're in with Jeff Parker and Jay Bellerose and Josh Johnson called the ETA Quartet. And there's also a band called SML.
Okay.
Um, so just a part of our community on many, many gigs over something like 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, CJ, the trumpet player who was kind of I've known him for over a decade, but never played with him until this record, but he's a musician who I really admire. He's a Juilliard trained trumpet player. Went to jazz, in the jazz program, but he had all of these other interests in his musical mind, and he eventually became part of a chamber music group called Y Music, like the letter Y,
Okay.
um, which is an astounding group, modern classical music with the violinist Rob Moose.
Mhm.
He's one of the really prominent members, but just beautiful music that they do. But but I always knew that CJ, even though improvisation wasn't his real thing,
Right.
he's a beautiful improviser. And so this is a great opportunity to bring him in. He plays French horn as well.
Yeah.
So for certain parts, he was experimenting with that in terms of the texture. Uh, Nicole McCabe on alto sax, Henry Solomon on baritone sax, and Bob Reynolds on tenor sax are people also in our community. Bob was on my 2016 album Frogtown. Henry Solomon has been, when I've done reiterations of my father's orchestra,
Yeah.
has played baritone in that group. And Nicole was probably the most recent person that I've come to know. And she's a literal powerhouse on the alto saxophone, just an absolute authoritative, just incredible voice. And together they just play to such an incredible ensemble.
Right.
Those five horns and that rhythm section. So it's personal relationships for me and these differing voices that have something to contribute that will enliven the music. It doesn't just feel like uh, okay, here's another solo over some changes or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's very much not that. Yeah. Yeah, really cool. It's funny how many family connections there are within, I wasn't I had John Clay I talked to John Clayton quite a bit, but I didn't
Mm,
realize that Gerald was his son. Uh
mm,
I did know that you were the son of of Gerald Wilson, but which I want to talk about a little bit, but
sure.
let's talk about a little bit about the tunes and a couple that really connected with me, although
Okay.
I enjoyed them all. Walk Tall, kind of this funky groove to it, and I think it has an association with Cannonball, if I'm not mistaken.
No doubt,
Yeah.
no doubt. Made famous by Cannonball's group, written by Joe Zawinul,
Mhm.
the great keyboard player. Um, those '60s albums of Cannonballs groups. I mean, any group by Cannonball. He was such a great band leader.
Yeah.
Um, Chose such incredible material, and he prioritized the groove and the feeling and the expression in the music so highly. Of course, he and his brother Nat were beautiful precision players, and when they had people like Charles Lloyd in the band or Yusef Lateef, they would make these incredible sections and play incredibly tightly. But this kind of uplift that the music has
Yeah.
in his groups is something that I have always been incredibly inspired by. And and there's numerous live recording versions of Walk Tall that Cannonball did. There's a great one where Jesse Jackson, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, does a spoken intro, and
Really?
you
Okay.
know, and he's and he's it's the live at Operation Breadbasket, which sadly I actually have not researched exactly what Operation Breadbasket
Yeah.
was, but
Interesting.
it had to be something around civil rights and giving people a living wage and something to eat, I would imagine. And so this rally, and Jesse Jackson is kind of whipping the crowd into a frenzy, and he says, you get into the church, and the preacher brings us to preach, and he says, you got to walk tall, walk tall, walk tall. And then Roy McCurdy you just you hear a little count up, and then it's just boom, and
Yeah.
just the beauty of that groove and the exuberance of it has always been an incredibly inspiring thing to me. And so I wanted to really pay tribute to that kind of energy
Yeah.
and sense of uplift and positivity in the song. I love how Joe Zawinul as a composer connects with that kind of spirit. He's a really, really fascinating composer. I mean, if you think about some of these themes, for instance, Walk Tall or
Yeah.
Mercy, Mercy, Mercy or Birdland,
Mhm.
they just like, there's something that lifts you into a different place. He had access to something. And he also, I feel like his, his experience with he was Ben Webster's roommate for many years. He was very tight with Ben Webster. The work with Cannonball, the work with Miles. I think the people that he allied himself with, Wayne Shorter, of course, shared such a foundational bedrock, important aspect in American jazz. And so this foreigner who comes over,
All right. Yeah.
great amount of talent. He just threw himself into the right swimming pool, and it seemed to have really rubbed off in his compositions. We also do In a Silent Way in this record as a kind of a segue into Walk Tall, another of Zawinul's really beautiful compositions. So just for me, uh, paying tribute to a certain special uplifting spirit was important to me to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think you captured it perfectly. Like Zyronol and Cannonball, they're like endlessly fascinating to me. It's like
Yeah,
I feel like I know everything about them, it kind of, and then I hear something else, and I'm just like, and I'm amazed. And it's also the accessibility of their music, even though it's very heady music at times. It's you could play a Mercy Mercy, you know. When I see things going stale when on a gig, that's a good one to call. People,
sure.
but yeah, Cannonball is just something else. So yeah, I mean, really a great arrangement of it, and I definitely feel like you captured all those elements that you talked about, the joyfulness and spirit of the music, but also there's this sophistication to it too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Another one, Bordentown, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Also, a little bit on a funky side.
Hmm.
Okay, can you talk about that?
Great composition, Border Town by Benny Wallace, who is a tenor saxophone player, not as known as he should be.
Yeah.
by and large. One of my major influences and mentors.
Mm.
I first started hearing his music when he made an album for Blue Note, probably somewhere in the late 80s. I don't remember
Oh,
the exact year, but perhaps 88 or so, an album called Twilight Time. And I can remember the moment I was driving down the street with my mother. My mom we had gone out to dinner, and we were listening to the jazz station, and this piece came on, this song came on with kind of a great groove, amazing solos, the saxophone player who was playing this incredibly angular and wide interval lines. There was a great trombone player. I could guess that it was John Scofield on guitar, but I didn't know who the rest of the band was. But I said we loved, both my mom and I loved this piece, which was not Border Town, because Border Town was from his follow-up album, which was called Border Town. But we heard the song, and I said we got to go to Tower Records right now. We got to get this album. So we went to Tower Records, bought this album, and I fell in love with Benny's work and continued to follow it over the years. Eventually, he moved to Los Angeles from New York
okay.
and was scoring films for a while. And we had the opportunity to really become friends and start working together. And and we still do to this day. I mean, he's actually having quite an active period in his life right now. He's the founder of a jazz presenting organization that also has a summer camp in Connecticut called Backcountry Jazz. So they do a weekly or bi-weekly festival during the summer, bring a lot of great musicians up, and then they do a camp in July in Bridgeport. So anyway, just singing the praises of Benny Wallace, his incredible personal language. He's from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
Um, so he grew up in the South, and he has a kind of, there's this incredible connection to Southern music and kind of honky tonk music and blues, and he just combines these influences in incredible ways. And then he's also quite an advanced player, intervallically, harmonically speaking, and developed over all these years a unique personal style
Right.
that you don't hear anybody else having. And so I've just always admired his tunes. I know from playing with him, I know many, many of his tunes. But Border Town is this kind of funky little minor thing that you imagine you're in some kind
Yeah.
of hot bar somewhere, and maybe it's on the border, and I just love the feeling of it, and a little tango aspect to it being
Yeah.
so I just tried to kind of heighten some of those aspects, and Bob Reynolds plays it beautifully, and it kind of comes up to a to an apex and then kind of breaks down, and there's a section that Gerald Clayton plays a solo, and the
Yeah.
key turns to major
Right. Right.
from
Yeah.
minor, and I said, Gerald, one way to think about this would be like, this is like one of those old Western movies that you go in, and the when the guy comes in and he comes into the saloon, and he flings the swinging doors
Yeah.
open, he comes in, and maybe there's going to be a gunfight, and everybody sort of looks up from their tables,
Yeah.
and and there's always a piano player. I
Sure.
said, you be that piano player. And then he interpreted, like, it's got to be a kind of this twisted, you end up in this totally new environment. And what he did with that, I think, was so beautiful. It makes for this incredible contrast between the saxophone centric part of the first half, and then you go into this other kind of drunken, uh, trippy feeling. So
Yeah.
great composition by Benny Wallace.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of a journey. It's funny too, because like I think that's the second time you've mentioned cinema and trying to describe your music. And I guess you're kind of surrounded by it, right? Like the LA.
True, that's true. Yeah, and I like the sense of narrative
Hmm.
also. So reading a lot, or when a show is really great, when the editing is great, when there's when any kind of medium of storytelling, can be podcasts, things like Radio Lab or This American Life, people who find ways to kind of take the story
Hmm.
and combine the elements in fascinating ways, to me is interesting, and it's interesting to find a way to do that in jazz. You can't control what people are going to play if they're improvised. It's not like, and that's the point. I mean, that's actually what makes it so incredible. You can say to Gerald Clayton, I want you to be the saloon piano player. And you can say to somebody else, I want you to be the saloon piano player. And the results are going to be completely different. And that's what I love about it. So you have these elements that you can control. Like, this is what I want to happen. I want some kind of hard edit to
Yeah.
happen here because we're trying to shift modes and tell a story and see what happens there. And I really like that, as a composer, to use improvisation and written elements, and then the sense of telling a story uh, with those elements.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a fine balance. It's like you said, it's what makes this music so beautiful too, right? Like just the you could suggest, but you can't control. And
Right.
that's cool. And then the final tune I wanted to mention, out of all the Beatles tunes that there are, you chose Because. Not a lot of covers of that song that I could think of or rearrangements of it. So, what made you choose that?
That piece on Abbey Road, because by the Beatles, it's so startling when it
It's true.
arrives. I mean, that arpeggiated thing in minor, and with these diminished chords that happen, and then in the guitar part there's this one little kind of ding ding, that's just, I just love that feeling. Love the lyrics of the song, and love how they harmonize on the song on the album. And I just thought, this also feels like something that could be adapted to instrumental music,
Mhm.
that that would be kind of fascinating, because you've got that theme, and it's kind of moving along, and there are nice senses of the idea where there could be call and response between that theme, which is so strong.
Yeah.
And then maybe somebody answering. So I arranged the song pretty much the same length as the way the Beatles did it. And in the second iteration, use some improvisation,
Mhm.
uh, kind of weaving in and between those thematic elements. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of music, and a testament to the range that Paul McCartney and John Lennon had,
Yeah.
and that they all had as a band. Is just so special. I actually recorded it once before on
Yeah.
an album called Adult Themes, and it's just a song I never tire of playing, and I wanted to try it with this group.
Cool, cool. All right. So, if we could shift gears a little bit, talk a little bit about your upbringing and how you came to play and everything. So, obviously you had mentioned your father's Gerald Wilson, noted arranger, trumpeter, I believe, right? He,
Yes.
he's actually he appears in my book. Uh,
Hmm,
I did I recently wrote a book on Ray Brown,
amazing.
and he did a session with Ray, I think with Ella Fitzgerald, if
No
I
doubt. Yes, absolutely.
so he's in there briefly, but there. So talk about if you could talk about your upbringing, like how what was it like growing up with Gerald Wilson?
Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles. I still live in Los Angeles, although I lived in New York for a period of time in the 90s,
Okay.
but I eventually came back. Um, I really loved growing up in Los Angeles in the 70s. It was a lot different than it is now. A little bit, I mean, it's still crowded, but a little less dense uh,
Hmm.
than these days. Although, of course, quite a bit smoggier. It was, as I remember, it was
Yeah.
quite smoggy. But my father was a wonderful musician with a long history already behind him because he was 50 when he had me with my mom, uh, and he had started working professionally around the age of 20,
Hmm.
maybe even a little bit before then in Detroit. He was from Mississippi and migrated to Detroit because there was so little opportunity in the Mississippi Delta where he was from,
Right.
and the segregated South was very, very difficult. My father was black, so for people who don't know, and he couldn't deal with it. He didn't like it. He hated it. He wanted to go north, and he had the opportunity in the 30s to visit the World's Fair in Chicago, and going north to him, it just the place seemed so incredible and full of possibility.
Hmm.
Um, and so he sort of begged his mother to let him move, to find a way to for him to move north and to study music. So they didn't have family or friends really in Chicago that could put him up, but they knew people in Detroit. So he
Right.
went there. So he started working around 1920. So by the time, I mean, by the age of 19 or 20, so by the time he was 50, he'd had a quite a substantial 30-year career under his belt. And uh, and my mother was just was not a musician, but was just an incredible lover of music. And where in some ways my father loved jazz, of course,
Sure.
and he loved classical music,
Mhm.
but it wasn't super open to many other forms of music. It was the 70s. He kind of dug Earth, Wind, and Fire. There were certain things that he could get with, but in general, he
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't his thing. Um, he did he did do some arrangements of rock tunes, like he has an amazing arrangement of Light My Fire with his
Hmm.
band that's on an album called California Soul, and he did an arrangement of that song California Soul as well. Um, so sometimes he'd pick and choose, he but my mother loved jazz. She loved classical music. She loved all kinds of folk music, things like Indian classical music. So she had Ravi Shankar albums and Ali Akbar Khan, and she had a lot of folk music, American folk music, a lot of blues. So her record collection was super wide, super diverse. Joni Mitchell, Chris Christopherson, the band, Bob Dylan. So between my two parents, what I got was this really deep, huge love for music. Even before I think I decided that I wanted to learn to play, was
Right.
just a love for music. My dad would take me places if there was a rehearsal or a concert. I got to meet musicians who I later really understood how legendary they were. Um, People like Harold Land, the great saxophone player, Teddy Edwards, another great, great saxophone player who they collaborated with him for many years. The guitarist John Collins, who had played with Nat King Cole, and just I got to know these people as a little kid, you know. And now when I think about that, I realize what a profound effect it had on me. There was a certain kind of feeling in those spaces, as we say today, of kind of support and camaraderie and lots of joke telling, even around a little boy. You know, there was, you know, and my dad would take me to the union and at the musicians union, and there was this kind of people would rehearse there, and there was this almost clubhouse atmosphere. And it was in the time, you know, when people smoked everywhere. So guys would be smoking and playing pool, and then they'd go
Yeah.
to their rehearsals, and you'd run into Tommy Tedesco at the musicians union. And, you know, my dad would be having conversations with all of these people. And that sense that, you know, now that's something I live. If I go to see somebody's gig, or if I run into somebody on the street, and that sense of that we're all part of the same community and club,
Yeah.
I think I was exposed to at a very early age and really loved. Um, uh, so so it was, I think, very easy for me to make the transition to, hey, can I get a guitar? You know, I want to learn Beatles tunes. And then I found that as soon as I learned quickly some chords, and
Mhm.
even just kind of how to move my fingers around the fretboard just a little, I was able to start to hear things by ear, like
Right.
little lines and little licks and riffs and things. And then of course I'd sit with my dad, and he'd teach me something. I mean, he tried to get me on the trumpet, and I just wasn't
Could ask. Yeah.
kind of holding the thing up to my, I got a few songs together, and but it just wasn't for me. But guitar felt right. And then I would sit at the piano, and in the same way, he would show me how to build up chords, and so I started learning to teach myself how to get around instruments using my ear, and took to it kind of quickly. And my mom was very, very encouraging on that. My dad was hilarious because he'd say, if you're not going to be serious about this, then you might as well give, you know, he was very serious about what he was doing. He was
Sure.
certainly extremely serious about the form of music and the tradition of music that he was a part of. And he'd say, if you're not serious about this and you don't practice, you know, you might as well forget it, Anthony, you know. But my mom was like, just let him go with this, Gerald, you know. And she got me into a boys choir that was here in California called the California Boys Choir. So I was in that from about the time I was 9 until my voice changed. And one of my choir member mates was Lenny Kravitz. He he was in
Okay.
the choir as well. Phineas Newborn's son, Phineas Newborn the third, was in the choir. Um, and they taught, you know, we it was quite a substantial group. We did a lot of classical repertoire, a lot of things. The group actually toured. We did concerts with the LA Philharmonic when a boys choir was needed. We would LA did not have an opera company by that time, but the New York City Opera would come, and if they needed children for scenes in the operas, we did Carmen and La Boheme. And so you had to learn pretty amazing music and prepare. And so I think being in the choir, I learned a lot about discipline. They taught us how to read music, to sight sing. They gave us a lot of ear training, like interval recognition, chord recognition. The more advanced people moved on to learn to harmonize in the manner of chorale style Bach chorales. Uh,
Yeah.
and the most advanced went on to learn counterpoint. My voice changed by the time I was getting to counterpoint, but it was a substantial education even before high school in a lot of sophisticated music. And so that was by that time the deal was set. I knew that music was between the ages of 9 to 12, 13. This was what I was going to do, and I just continued. And around the age of 13, I fell in love with jazz. Even though
Yeah.
I heard a lot of it and it didn't bother me, I didn't dislike it. It wasn't what I was really listening to.
All right.
And then around 14, when that happened, it was all over. And
Still
you
pretty
just
young
have those
though.
kind of awakenings.
Yeah, totally. So he was cool with the guitar. He didn't try to move.
No, he was totally cool with it. He didn't, it wasn't like he thought I should be playing saxophone, but he just said, if you're going to do this,
Take it to.
and especially as I got more into it, I really want you to learn you need to know your chords and harmony. You need to know how the music is constructed. You're not
Right.
going to be playing by ear. You're going to learn what things are made up of. And he was very generous. I mean, and one way that he liked to teach me things was, say, take a tune like this is an example that we did, a tune like Green Dolphin Street, and we would write our own new contrafact head to it. And
Yeah.
so he would say, okay, I'm going to give you a phrase, and then I want you to follow up on the phrase. And then by the end, we would have like a 32 bar tune that was made up of these little bebop cliches and lines and things. And he says, if you can learn to kind of string together, he didn't use the phrase two fives, he would say minor seventh to the seventh.
Okay. Yeah.
This more old school way of talking about it. We'd say if you get your minor seventh to the seventh together, and find ways of resolving those notes in many different ways, you're gonna you're gonna be able to do this. And so we would practice those kinds of things together. He would pick up the trumpet or he would comp for me on the piano, and we'd get it together.
Uh, yeah, that's very cool, man. So, but it always seems like it had a compositional or arrangement sort of uh element to it, you know.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the way he processed information. And I must have taken that on a bit too, because for certain, um, it's my compositional process
Mhm.
that informs so much of what I do and the way I play even today.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, it's funny. I've had a number of people I've talked to whose parents were jazz music. You know, Josh Redman was on the show, Grant Green Jr. There's been a number, Eric Mingus, and yeah, it's like it's very interesting to hear. They all have a similar story where like I was always around these guys and I didn't realize who they were, but now I think back and these were like the guys, you know? It's
It's really funny. 2 summers ago at Newport, uh, I ran into Josh. Josh was playing with Christian
Mm,
McBride and Brian Blade and Brad Meldau, and we all found ourselves backstage kind of chatting. And Brad's kids were there,
yeah.
and we got onto this subject of being kids of a musician. Like we were like, yeah, we were those kids, at the gig, running around. It's seeing
Yeah.
our fathers talk and really interesting.
And someday they're gonna have the same stories, you know, which is cool, really cool.
Yeah,
Uh, and then there's some connection, I think, with Shuggy Otis, right?
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know talk about or how are you connected? I'm a little confused. A
So
son?
our families, the Wilson family and the Otis family, were very close when
Mhm.
I was growing up. Uh, my sisters, Nancy, Jerry, and Terry, well, we all, so our families knew the Otis the Wilson family knew the Otis family. We would go over to the house. Johnny Otis, great rhythm and blues legend, who
Sure.
was also an amazing visual artist, and he would paint. And their house had it was amazing. Just there were paintings and African masks and all kinds of there's just stuff to look at. And my sister Nancy dated Johnny Otis's son Nicky, who's Shoogie's brother,
Okay.
and my sister Terry dated Shoogie, and Terry eventually married Shoogie Otis.
Okay.
Oh, in around 1977, I would say they got married, maybe 78. So I was about 10 years old at that time. And so, Shuggy had already made those incredibly beautiful, innovative albums. Um, and and I'd say even by that time wasn't doing quite as much, but they were truly in love. My sister Lillian eventually passed away around 2002, um, and they had a son named Eric, who is a musician as well.
Okay.
Lives here in Los Angeles, Eric Otis. And yeah, so the families just have stayed connected, and Shuggy recorded on one of my father's albums, album called Lomeline. He played on a couple of songs, and so I always knew Shuggy growing up. It was just my sisters, Shuggy and Nikki. We'd all go out. They'd take us to the park. They'd take me to the park, um, to movies.
Mhm.
Um, And it was great. And my dad said, well, Shuggy's he's a good guitarist. You should ask him for some pointers. And so I'd sit with Shuggy and he had his red 335.
Yeah.
And he was the person who showed me Day Tripper by the Beatles.
Okay.
Um, and he taught me some like blues licks and some cool chords and just kind of, I mean, because God, the way he the way he gets around a guitar is so unique and special,
Mm.
not to mention the songs he wrote and kind of this contribution that he made that is still so influential. So, yeah,
But somewhat, I always found him to be somewhat underrated, I wish
totally.
I wish more people were hip to him because it's just, yeah, like you said, the music is so unique and special, and
There's
yeah.
the great that footage with Roy Buchanan and Shoogie's in the background. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. I
It's
gotta check
Johnny
that.
Otis' show, and so I guess Roy Buchanan was a guest, and
Mhm.
Shoogie's playing, and I mean Roy was
Yeah.
absolutely an incredible master, but Shuggy takes a solo, and it's just like, whoa, man! It's he doesn't need to do what Roy Buchanan did. I mean, two completely different personalities, but it's just funny to see also Shuggy just hanging in the background when you know how great
Yeah.
he is and was. Yeah, I've totally underrated as a guitarist, and I think some personal limitations of his kept him from kind of staying out there in the mix of things, which I lament because he's just an incredible musician. More
Yeah.
people should know about him as a player, not just Strawberry Letter 23 and
Yeah.
those few things. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So, and then I would be remiss if I didn't ask about your connection with Diana Krall. How did that come to be? And it's been such a you've been a member of her group for forever, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, these days she's experimenting a little bit with some different configurations. So just lately and a bit in last year, she was taking some trios out, so not with guitar.
Yes.
Um, but yes, since 2001,
Hmm.
I started playing with her. Uh, for many years, I have played with John Clayton and Jeff Hamilton, and for a number of years in their big band that they have, the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, and They were the house band during the jazz season at the Hollywood Bowl for a number of years.
Right, yeah.
And so there was a concert that was organized with Diana as the guest artist at the Hollywood Bowl, and she came, and I'd known her and Russell since probably 1997 or so. I would be out at different festivals and gigs and got to know Russell quite a
Mhm.
bit more than Diana. She was just a little more private of a person, but she was always super friendly. And and she came to do these concerts with John and Jeff's big band, and they, of course, were her mentors, very, very good friends. Uh, and there was a nice connection on that concert, and she came up to me on a break and she said, just it's really great playing with you. If I were ever doing anything and called you, would you be interested in that? It almost sounded like she thought I wouldn't be into it.
Yeah.
And I said, of course I would. I would love to play with you. And and I guess in the meantime, she talked to John and Jeff a little bit about something that she was thinking about doing. I mean, this all happened kind of within 1 or 2 days. We did these rehearsals, and I think she went to John and Jeff, and she said, I don't think Anthony would want to do this, but I'm thinking about doing a live recording with the two of you. And do you think he would want to play?
Yeah.
And they said, of course, you should ask him, and so the next day, right after the concert, um, this guy approached me, and it was Steve Macklem, who's her manager, and he said, Anthony, I'm Steve Macklem, and he said, there's something that's coming up that I'm Diana's manager. There's something that's coming up that I think she'd love to have you on. Would you be into it? It's a live recording in November,
Yeah.
and that turned out to be what was live in Paris.
Yeah.
Um, and then it just sort of continued. She kept calling me for things and tours and recordings, and we became very good friends. And what I found from the beginning working with her, which I tell people a lot, because a lot of times students who play guitar or students who play piano that are working with guitarists or guitarists that are working with singers, they have a lot of questions about accompaniment and the what in a lot of their ears ends up being a clash between guitar and piano.
Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed from playing with her from the beginning was we didn't seem to have any of that going on. And I remember one of the first rehearsals for those recordings, the live in Paris, those gigs, she said, if there's a little train wreck between our harmony, don't worry about backing off, or just let's just find our way through it. And like, I don't want you to feel like you need to hang back and prioritize my comping, or that I should hang back.
Yeah.
And I think I learned something that was really essential through that, which is if you find a way to really listen and blend with another player rather than uh, in feeling initially or prior to it that there's going to be a possible clash, you can find really beautiful ways to blend together. And so that happened really naturally. Um, and I know that that was one of the essential pieces that has kept us working together so long, because it's for us, I think, and for me in that situation, just about listening, being present there,
Mhm.
and being a part of the music, and it just worked well for us. It's been really great. We did a
Yeah.
tour this past May that was with John and Jeff, who aren't
Right.
always available for
Sure.
those tours, and incredibly special. one, especially when you've developed a language with certain musicians in a certain ensemble over a
Right.
long period of time, to come back and revisit and just hear how naturally the beat flows and the dynamics flow, and how effortless certain things can be in music. It's one of
Yeah.
the great blessings of being in an ensemble for a long time. So
Right.
I've really loved that.
Yeah, which is a rarity in jazz circles, to have that
Yeah.
same group for that period of time is really cool. And it's I mean they're great recordings. I don't know. What else can you say?
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah. It's funny. I was saying to a friend just yesterday, sometimes when we think about some of our favorite bands in jazz, you realize that they were maybe together 2, 3 years.
yeah,
And obviously the Beatles weren't together too long. Coltrane Quartet, Miles Davis,
four or five
these two
years.
great quintets. Yeah. And so yeah, a long period of time can be really, really incredible.
That's
Modern jazz quartet is the one that I think of, and how
yeah. Well, they were yeah.
absolutely astounding they were over a long, long period of time.
Yeah, yeah, Oscar Peterson trio stuck together for a while. But yeah, I mean, with some changes, of course. But yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's funny. I've tried, I really want to get my book out to John was very instrumental in helping me get a lot of interviews early on but that's going back like 25 years. You know,
Okay.
I'd love to get him a book, but I know since the fire and stuff, I haven't been able to reconnect with him. So if ever you want to put in his ear, I'd like to send him a book because he was really so helpful, you know.
Totally. Totally. He would love it. He would love it.
I think he would enjoy it. Yeah, he was he was so I hadn't done anything in journalism at that point, and he was just so kind.
Hmm.
Great. So I'm gonna wrap this up for you. Tell me about what projects you're working on currently, and are you going to be touring with this album?
Yeah. So the album comes out the very end of August, the last weekend of August. We'll be playing in Los Angeles at Sam First, of course, because the album was recorded live at Sam First, and Sam First has their label, and they release these live records, and that's been amazing. It's really cool what they're doing there. I don't know if you're familiar with the place in LA, but it's just a great club, beautiful piano, great
Yeah.
listening place. So we'll do a couple nights there, a couple nights at SF Jazz.
Okay.
Um, there's a presenter in San Diego called the Athenaeum. We'll be playing later on in the fall. I'm working on some other things, hopefully New York City, probably not in the fall, but winter or spring next year. Some other East Coast things. May not be able to travel with everybody from here, but put the band together and in New York, Philly, etc. So some festivals and clubs next year. And I want to keep writing for this band as well. I mean, this was a kind of a revival of something I had done and stopped doing, and I find it really exciting to go
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
revisit the instrumentation and see what's there for me. But I'm also working on a long-term project of music that's inspired by the Mississippi Delta, which is where my father was from. And I started visiting there around 2016 and started really envisioning a project. Um, I haven't told you, but I also do photography. So I've been photographing in the Mississippi Delta since about 2018 and
Okay.
writing music based on my experiences, family history, all kinds of things around the Mississippi Delta. So I hope to record that over the next 6 months or so and have that music come out
Yeah.
in 2026. And then the book of photography will come out in 2027.
Excellent.
So I keep it going. We're playing some stuff with Diana in the fall. So yeah, just keeping busy. I also do quite a bit of teaching. So I'm teaching at Cal Arts,
Okay.
great music school here in Los Angeles, and the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. So between everything, it ends up being a quite a full plate.
Yeah, yeah, I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, man. Well, it was really nice talking to you.
You,
If you're
Jeff.
out on the East Coast, let me know. I'm here in New Jersey.
Okay.
Hour between Philly and New York, so I'm kind of like on the Jersey Shore area.
Okay. What town?
I'm in a town called Howell, but I'm near like if you know the area, like not far from Asbury Park. That's where I play a lot.
I was in Spring Lake
It's very close to me.
in June. I have a close friend who lives there.
Oh, get out. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so yeah, I spent a bunch of time in Spring Lake. I love it over there. It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
beautiful.
I'm like maybe 15, 20 minutes from there.
What?
Well,
Amazing.
yeah, my little area is Asbury, Red Bank. Most of my gigs are in that area, plus Philly and New York, but we
Yeah.
got, we got a nice little hub happening over here, which is cool.
Nice, nice. Yeah, well, next time I'm there, which I certainly will be there to visit. I'll look you up. We should visit.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And if you have anything else to promote in the future, let me know. This again, this is for the Jazz Real book, but I also write for several magazines and stuff. So uh
Okay.
I wish you a lot of luck, and I implore the listeners to check out the record for sure. And again, when is it coming out? On
August 29th
August
on
29th.
Empress Records. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, the House of the Singing Blossoms.
Yes, sir.
All right. I wish you a lot of luck.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Really appreciate it.